Hello and welcome back to a Bionicle review. Today we're taking a look at the Toa Pohatu Nuva, the upgrade to the original Toa of Stone. This is part 2 of my 50 subscriber special, and this is a pretty important figure for me because this was my first LEGO set and obviously by extension my first Bionicle set. I've always been a pretty big Pohatu fan, both as a set and as a character. I do really like Pohatu. So I figured this was a pretty good choice to celebrate. But anyway, I've probably bored you all to death at this point. Let's start off, as always, by taking a look at the articulation. Now, Pohatu has some pretty interesting proportions, as it's pretty obvious. I mean, geez, that thigh gap, but yeah, the original Toa didn't have a ton of articulation, even with the fact that it's all ball joints. The head is completely static, that was standard. The arms, ball jointed shoulders, which not a ton of range, and they do bump into the hips. That's more of a Pohatu problem than in general, but I mean, you can still get the arm around, nothing at the elbow, all one piece. The hand is also ball jointed, so you can get expressiveness, but you're not gonna get anything crazy. The legs, ball jointed. You can pretty obviously tell a little wiggly, but we'll get into that in a moment. Feet are also ball jointed. Pretty decent. You can see his tools being claws, which I mean, given the Mata design having the two slicer hands, it kind of makes sense. But yeah, they did just carry this over in a new color for the kicking function. So while the articulation isn't amazing, it is still acceptable. The only real drawback is the lack of head articulation, which, I mean, is technically fixable, but at least on Pohatu it does require an illegal technique. Now, let's get into Pohatu's gimmicks. Obviously, the important one is, well, they made these a lot more secure, but you're supposed to be able to knock it off. They were held on by a stud, so the mask could be knocked off. Originally from the Borak, or the, originally from the Rahi, then the Borak, and with the Toa Nuva, it was the Borakal, which were the silver repaints. This here had a lot of silver, if that wasn't obvious. But another gimmick is, and this is actually shown in the instructions, you use a gear to block it, but sorry, my hand was completely in the way there. He can't actually run. Which, given the fact that the Kakama, or Kakama Nuva in this case, is about being able to move incredibly fast, it is quite funny that he can run. And the legs are pretty wacky, I have to admit. This motion just looks pretty silly. But, yeah, unfortunately, because of that, he does have a bit of trouble standing if you only gear one of the feet. But with both of them, not a big deal. Now, a secondary gimmick of that is if you take off both of the claws and these convenient pins that are stored on the arms, then you just peg them together, you get sort of a ball thing. Doesn't quite work as well as the Lego boulder that the original came with, but it is still something that he is designed to kick. And yes, this is mentioned in the instructions too. It doesn't super work, just because this doesn't really roll that well, but it is still intentional. Now, as for a quick size comparison, he's a bit taller than the average high-grade gunpla kit, but he is quite wide. I mean, wide hips aside, he is just a quite large figure. It wasn't until I started doing these reviews that I realized just how large the old kits were. I mean, they only got bigger as they went, but yeah, even the Toa Mata were pretty big figures. I'm impressed by the price ranges that they had in retrospect. So to wrap this review up, Pohatu Nuva holds up surprisingly well. I mean, the articulation's a little bit limited, but that was par for the course at the time. That's nothing to knock him for particularly. And obviously, I'm definitely biased because he holds quite a dear place in my heart, but this is actually still a pretty decent figure, even aside from my personal bias. I will say I do wish these guys had articulated heads. They did fix that pretty much immediately after they got past this. I mean, actually, the next year the main villain had an articulated head, and then afterwards all of them did. So, some growing pains here and there with the line, but I think the Nuva did a really exceptional job of making upgraded versions of the original Toa. Well, if you can get the parts or the actual set for a decent price, I can definitely recommend picking it up. But anyway, that's it for this review. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, helps with the algorithm. Subscribe for future reviews and watch my backlog. And as always, until next time, happy building.